Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Emily Moyer, and as you all know, that I have used this year to try some new things, talk to some new people, check out some new perspectives and different ways of doing things as I prepare to launch my own solo series in the upcoming months. And so I've been dipping my toes and my eyes and my ears back into listening to a lot more videos, podcasts, watching a lot more videos, which is something I hadn't really been doing the last couple of years. And to sort of re-pique my interest, I have been trying out a lot of new people. And I have found very interesting young people with a variety of perspectives, different sets of skills and talents than sort of what was there before. And I've really been enjoying that process. And as part of that, I found this guy. Check it out.
You're probably looking at me right now thinking, who the heck is this guy? Yeah, I don't really know either. Matter of fact, that was me from like 4 years ago. But you see, that's my point. Life comes at you pretty fast when it's coming at you pretty fast. And I live in this same dystopian nightmare that you do, where time is literally here one day and gone the next, and then you're looking at yourself in the mirror wondering, where did the last 4 years go? So one day I just woke up and decided to get out there and see what the heck is going on in this world. This guy's trying to kill me, by the way. And I'm trying to make some sense of it all, but this world doesn't make sense. And the more I dig, the more rock solid that fact becomes. There's a lot of secrets out here. Like, did you know that umbrella is a message to the guy in this building over here? Now, this building right here, that they've located my position? So I'm on my way to take this dude out real quick before he realizes that I'm onto him. Cause that's not me on the beach. That's my decoy. But honestly, this has been going on for a while, and I'm getting kind of tired of being so dang quiet about it. And I'm not getting any closer to safety, which means I must be getting closer and closer to something else that's mighty important. And at the end of the day, when the dirty work is done and the trash is taken out and the body is burned, rest in peace, Cinnamon. It's important to smell the flowers and bring it home a little bit. And remember why we do it. Oh, shoot, get down. Life is good, man. And I have an easy one knowing that they're never gonna find me. And even when they get really close, I'm always just one lucky dog. So what is 21 CD? Well, I'm a 21 CD. You're a 21 CD. Cause we're all 21st century dystopians, man. So what is 21 CD? I guess it's got a little to do with each and every one of us and all the stories that we've got to tell. The ones that they just really don't want you to tell. So stick around and you might just find out that you're not so alone. And you might start asking yourself other questions, like, who is 21 CD? Where is 21 CD? And the answer to that last one is simple. Closer than you think. Don't drink the water and question everything.
Well, for right now, at least we know he's right here. 21 CD, aka Jonathan Val. Welcome to Strange Mosaic. Nice to meet you, my friend.
Nice to meet you. Good to be here.
So, I mean, like, I could make it fancy, but let's just say this. Who are you? Where do you come from? What are you doing? And what's the plan? Right? Like I think I found my way over to your channel from like a post from the confessionals. Like they were like, "Oh yeah, go check
Common.
out this
Yeah.
guy's video." Right? And I went over and like started catching a few videos here and there. And then, like, I don't know, the day I reached out to you or something 4 or 5 weeks ago, like one really kind of caught my attention. And I reached out and asked, and I've been paying a little closer attention since then. And, you know, you have a different flavor to you. Like it's a really well balanced combination of obvious research, a great sense of humor, probably some interesting life experiences, and then being comfortable sort of playing with the truth and playing with people that I find to be more valuable at this point than just like your hard and fast, research or like being very pro or anti something. So it's great job. No one else is doing
Thank you.
it quite like you're doing it. But just to get so we can get to know you a little bit before we dig in, like how did you come up with this?
Well, a long time ago, like 5 or 6 years at this point, maybe even a little bit further back, I started writing science fiction.
Ah,
And so I have this whole sort of background in sci-fi and dystopianism and what it really means to sort of take a look into the future thanks to the work of people like, I don't know, George Orwell or, any of these other guys who seem to have some kind of picture of what the future will be like.
mhm,
And when you apply that to my background, which is in sort of an interesting spiritualism type of realm. I grew up in the forest in what many people would call a cult, so that gave me a very interesting point of view as far as God goes. And I kind of had to discover what God was all by myself, really, because when you're raised in that kind of situation, you know, who knows what's real and what's not. There's so many different things happening. There's so many weird characters. But throughout time, over time, I developed this sort of perspective on how all of this sci-fi dystopian sort of these clues and for what the future will hold are connected to a biblical narrative in my point of view. And so I've sort of shaped this whole 21 CD project around that concept, taking a unique spiritual concept that you won't find in a church because it's not in a church, and converting that into modern realism and just being very honest and upfront with people about the reality that they live in. Because what I feel like is people don't want to look at their own reality. They don't even want a concept of reality. They just want whatever is easiest for them. And that's where we find our echo chambers, right? That's where we start developing these patterns of research, this type of entertainment that I like, this type of music that I like, and thanks to the algorithm, which is the new god, I call AI the new god, but thanks to this algorithm arm of the AI, that echo chamber is built for you very conveniently and very quickly, only with a matter of a few clicks, and your entire algorithm is set up for you, and now you're in your echo chamber. So anybody who happens upon 21 CD is, in my opinion, branching out in a way that is pretty exciting because it means you're probably looking for some weird answers because my answers aren't typically normal. And kind of like I told you before we even did this interview, a lot of the stuff that I say is shock value. It's not necessarily because I believe everything I say. I'm talking about the conspiracies, I'm talking about the secrets, I'm talking about the myths because at some point somebody believed in them. And I think that an important question is why did they believe in those things? And so if I can get you to ask some of those questions about your everyday life, why is it this way? Why is it that way? Then maybe you'll start to develop new answers and you'll break out of your echo chamber. And that's kind of what 21 CD is all about because none of us have the answers. We're all speculating. We're all, products of these ideas are all products of conjecture because I'd be willing to bet that almost nothing is as you see it. Like I would basically be willing to bet that my entire life and yours is completely fabricated and there's almost nothing real to it at all that we can control.
knew I was going to like you. Yeah, I mean, basically, so when I said you see, I guess you had some interesting experiences. I had no idea about your background, right? I have not really listened to any content of yours that tells us much of anything about you other than what I can glean from, listening to you play with ideas.
Hmm.
And I'm sort of, I don't have the theatrical value to my work that you have, but I like to try things on for size, right? And so
Right.
like for me to be able to like work through an idea, I have to for a minute suspend disbelief, right? And so try on like an outfit that I would never normally wear just to see what it looks like or what it feels like. And so when I talk about it that way, like for that moment, I'm allowing myself to believe it. And then once we've kind of gone all the way, it's like walk yourself back and decide what still makes sense. Right. And so I as well don't like, I don't agree with everything anyone says or everything or anything that I say. Because what I'm saying at that moment is like me trying to work out whatever the line of thought is, right?
Hmm.
It kind of sounds like with a lot more sort of dramatics and sci-fi sort of pomp and circumstance to it. That's a lot of what you're doing.
Hmm.
And I'm curious to know if you're willing to share a little bit more, and don't share anything you don't want to share. What kind of cult did you grow up in? Like, was it a cult that was like one that would be considered more sort of like hippy dippy new age, or one that is more like some strange esoteric version of Christianity, or something like drug based, or like what kind of cult was it?
It was a Christian Doomsday cult, and it wasn't big. It had about 25, 30 members in it. And my family was basically the vehicle that because we had all this land. It's a long, long story, and I could fill a whole episode just on this story. Not to say that my story is amazing or anything, but like there was this time in history where my dad was going through some kind of religious awakening in his mind, and he ended up inviting a bunch of strange men to our land. I was a young child at this point. I was probably 9 years old, 10 years old or so, and before I knew it, just a lot of weird stuff started happening. And over the course of the next 2 years, I got to witness how all of these guys um, followed Christ. And they were a very restorationist sort of group, meaning nobody truly goes to hell forever. Everybody will be redeemed. After all, if for those who are biblically minded, if Christ said he's going to redeem all, why the hell wouldn't he? Can he not? Is it impossible for him to do that? If it's impossible, he's not God. So you have to sort of redefine your idea of etymology and all that kind of stuff because it says what it says. And the Christian church has brutalized the message in mine and the opinion of many others. And I think that's why there's such a mass exodus of churchgoers right now. People now are starting to come back because there's this new wave of spirituality coming. But the past 10 years or so, it actually wasn't that way. It was a very secular world to be in. And so my family developed this whole idea, and yeah, we had the cyanide pills, we had all the ways out, the where we're gonna go, we had the guns, we had all the stuff. And then one day, thank the Lord, my dad had an awakening, and this cult was obliterated, and everybody was kicked off the property. There was essentially a cleaning crew that went through and just made sure that nobody could find us anymore. We left the area, and that was pretty much my upbringing. And from there on out, I basically didn't live anywhere consistently until I enlisted in the military, where I went on to do interrogation operations and worked on some interesting projects. And from there, I've heard that the cult has moved to Africa. I'm not exactly sure
Oh, so
what.
the cult, even though your dad started it, the cult went on without him.
Yeah, yeah, it's still
Okay.
out there. It's in Africa right now, and instead of being 100% comprised of men, it is now 100%, well, 99% comprised of women, which means there's only one man and 99 women. It's exactly what it sounds like. So, and if you want to look it up, it's called The Bride. You can look up the cult. It's called The Bride. It's
Okay.
crazy. Um, And, not crazy in the way that, not like the anthill children or something where body parts are being cut off or anything, but I'm talking, weird seances in the sky, dances around fires, weird rituals, and belief that women are far inferior to men and should basically be hidden in every aspect. The idea that women should not pursue education or anything higher than perhaps, a man might be able to achieve.
Here.
Go up to the top there and search Gary
Okay.
Nailer I believe it's Iler, and then there you go. Do the bride cult after you got it.
All right.
Let's see if I can find it. Let me look it up real quick.
Let's see. I don't know. This here's one called Cult in the Forest. Is this it? Right here? No.
Well, that might be my interview with Tony.
This is from something from the New Yorker.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's called The
No.
Remnant Bride now.
The Remnant Bride cult. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be able to find it. All right. The Family International, People of Remnant, right here. Let's see.
Going down, you're getting different results than I am.
Of course, because as you explained, the algorithm has a different reality made for me than for you.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm actually on the deep web right now, so you might not
Okay.
even be able to see this, but I will send it to you and you can put
Okay,
it in
cool.
post. Actually, you know
Awesome.
what? Let me send it. Can I send it to you through Zoom?
Yeah, just put it in the chat and I'll open it.
All right.
I had a feeling your background was going to be interesting, but I have to be honest, I didn't see this coming. So I love it, right? Like I love being surprised. All right, let's see. The Remnant Bride. Here we go. All right, let me get this open. And here we are. Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
Now, when it came to this guy, he did end up getting in some trouble with the law, lots of tax evasion stuff, some violence, some stuff like that. You could see the type of books he likes to write.
Uh-huh.
Very interesting stuff. Most of it has to do with suppressing women and how basically women have ruined the planet. He's very much of the mind that thanks to Eve, man has been destroyed. Um, and so his answer to that is to move to Africa, where he basically fled and to comprise his congregation of only women. I don't know how you rationalize that, but when that started to happen on our property, that's when my
I
dad,
know how you rationalize that.
when that started happening on my property, is when my dad started getting really like, no. And we also had increasingly violent people showing up to join because Gary was the leader. I didn't really say that, but I make it sound like my dad was the leader. He wasn't. He just had everything Gary wanted. And like a classic cult leader, they can convince you to give them everything.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what happened. And as increasingly violent men showed up, my dad had to sort of put a cap in that. So um, fast forward, and here we are. Now I make shows about it once in
All
a
right.
while.
So, well, thank goodness for your father, sort of seeing the light, for lack of a better term, right
Hmm.
word. And it is, like a couple of things that I've come to. I grew up completely opposite from you, right? I grew up with no religion at all,
Hmm.
right? Like my family is very like my dad is a very secular Jew, and my mother was a very secular sort of some denomination of Christianity. Her dad was some kind of like Presbyterian or Protestant, and her mom was a Christian Scientist, but she didn't practice any of that stuff. And God was not something that was spoken of in my house. We did not go to church or temple unless somebody was getting married. But there was also not like some bashing or hatred of religious people. And my dad would let me play with the kids that went to church or temple or whatever it was, right? But that was not really a part of my reality. So everything that occurred that we would call sort of like extra, like figments, things that as a child seemed like either figments of my imagination or superstitions or suspicions or whatever it is. Like, I guess I had alternate stories in my head for what the cause or the stimulus of that was, or what that meant, that had nothing to do with anything biblical or religious, because just those ideas weren't really present, right? And like the first times I ever went to like church with somebody, if I like spent the night at their house and we went, I was like, what the fuck is this, dude? What are these people talking about, right?
Yeah.
But even having that like distance from any kind of either official or like more esoteric kind of religion, I'm starting to recognize the extent to which like our society is full of all different kinds of cults,
Yeah.
right? Like literally almost like any group that you are long term like a part of and like participate in all of the rituals and events and social like stuff of that group starts to develop a lot of the same kinds of trappings, right? They just call the like driver of those ideas something different than pastor or God or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
um and so also my research has led me like the thing that has been that sort of tied everything I've done since I started doing this and even before together has been my understanding through experience and my research into MK Ultra and the various realities that have sprung up off of that, right? And the I almost at this point view each of the sub projects, all of the separate code name projects as a mystery cult of their own. They had started all these separate cults that were based around specific ideas or specific substances or like one concept, and then what can we do with that? Like how many things can we achieve from sort of reinforcing this idea over and over, or playing with this concept, and how wide of a net can we cast? And then when we cast a wide net, but there seems to be one thing there we didn't expect, we use that to start the next cult or the next mystery or the next whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
And so you had a very specific, like, obvious experience with that, but something you said in the opening, and I think people should take a look at their own reality this way. I feel like we've all been much more deeply influenced by our culture than what we think, right? There's the great Terence McKenna saying that culture is not your friend, it's an operating system. And the extent to which one is aware of theirs, people who know that they grew up in a cult are maybe a step ahead of people who think that they didn't in terms of understanding what's really going on here.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I mean, the CIA is a cult. The CIA is actually, if you want to lean into the MK Ultra idea a little bit, the CIA cult. And first of all, yeah, I mean, it's a good point that you just made. You have to redefine cult because when people hear the word cult, it's a shock value word.
Mhm.
People automatically think about Jonestown. They think about the worst possible situations in which a cult could exist. How many people were killed? How many were kidnapped? All that kind of stuff. But how many drank the Kool-Aid? But a cult is really just a group of people who band together and form beliefs and then defend those beliefs and engage in whatever rituals or whatever you want to call them, patterns, techniques, whatever you want to call them. They're they're just following their own doctrine, right? So in that way, yes, the CIA, especially considering that the CIA actually hired magicians and spiritualists to teach their agents how to remote view and whatnot, it's absolutely 100% a cult. But most people won't identify it as that. Hollywood is also a cult with
Yep.
with many smaller ones, like you said, integrated in there. It's not just one thing.
Right.
It's like it's kind of like a spider's nest. When you open the nest, all the babies spill out. Those are all your little cults, and they all have their own little web of influence that they're going to go on to make, and they're going to just gather up all of these bodies to follow their own little doctrines. So you're 100% right. As far as all the code names with the CIA, MK Ultra Project, many of those many of those are dead ends, but I spent a lot of time on the dark web, a lot of time beyond passworded walls and whatnot, and in my opinion, obviously I can't see everything. I'm not in the CIA. I have had a TS clearance, so I've seen a lot, but I haven't seen everything. And obviously with stuff like MK Ultra, now it's destroyed, so it's impossible to even see it. But whenever they got caught, they had to change the name. And so MK Ultra is the most popular name, but I'm sure you've also heard of Montauk, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you've also heard of Monarch, and I'm sure you've also heard of Bluebeam. These are all part of the MK Ultra sort of web of influence. Because, and I'm gonna go off here. You can stop me whenever you want, but in the modern information landscape, which is the most important landscape, the pursuit of truth is starting to feel more like it's you're navigating sort of a series of stage sets versus just studying verifiable facts anymore. So the world has sort of become this, if you will, if you put it in MK Ultra terms, this curated hallucination.
Yep.
And so we're really just in this giant museum filled with exhibits of reality, and they're all kind of rotating in and out of view. And some people spend more time in one branch of the museum than others, and that's their little echo chamber. But each of these rooms, if you want to call them that, in the museum is manufactured by someone with some kind of vested interest in controlling whatever you perceive.
Yeah.
And so that controlling force isn't it's this is also important. It's not hidden. It's literally everywhere. It's in the history lessons, it's in our technology, it's in our myths and our stories that we tell each other. It's in our social identity and structure and even our sense of self, what we believe we are. And at the heart of this whole labyrinth in my video, um, I call it a labyrinth. It you can see that it sits one consistent theme on the throne, and that's control. They must have control. And in this modern time, that's more important than ever. But in the past, whenever control was lost, that's when we would have a great reset. And when I talk about great resets, everybody becomes really weird. But it's, yes, so, society, humanity has started over many times. And it's not like everybody gets killed off and there's a brand new Adam and Eve. But ask yourself what happened with the Mayans and the Inca and the Aztec. Ask yourself what happened when entire civilizations were annihilated with absolutely zero written history left behind. Who writes that history? Who tells the story of the Maya and the Inca and the Aztec? The Spaniards do. That's who. Because to the victor goes the narrative. So we're told if we just do our research and we dig up the right historical facts and we trust the right scientists and we listen to the right authorities, we'll see reality more clearly. But in my opinion, reality itself is tampered with. There is no real reality for you to see. As weird as that sounds, there's nothing but centuries long architecture, basically, of manipulation that's been built by governments and societies and corporations, by what many people just simply term as the Illuminati, but is really just a massive web of underground cults such as the Freemasons and the all of the Templar sects and all that kind of stuff. Those are all very much Masonic and therefore, satanic in the end. But all of these ideas are organized and put together for us to consume and for us to look at and say, oh, this is reality. Now all I have to do is understand this.
Yep.
But it's not true. It's like trying to understand the reality of a Disney movie. It does. What do you mean? Like it's not real. It's fake. But you know, this is why I say 21 CD has a lot of speculation to it, a lot of conjectures, because you have to ask the question. Everything starts from the question of what is real? Is this real? And the answer to this answer that I give is typically, well, where's the proof?
Right.
There's no proof.
Right.
It's not there.
So, I'm understanding more and more why it is that I am attracted to the way you're doling out your thoughts, right? And that is, it's I've kind of come to the same place. Maybe I have, some different thoughts about, what we think of some of these underground cults or whatever it is, but everything is fabricated,
Hmm.
right? Like, my for a really long time, if you're a person in search of the truth, then you're told to, go in search of primary source documents, right? But as you pointed out early on in your video on MK Ultra, fabricating documents was part of like one of the original projects in
Yep.
the beginning of MK Ultra, right? And so, I mean, to the extent that if people understood, and I'm going to do a show about this at some point, the extent to which paper mills have been involved in the CIA and MK Ultra and all different kinds of projects that have been undertaken in clandestine, operations and whatever it is, right? Then primary source, like that, this is our first problem when we're going to the easiest thing in the world to fabricate, which is documents, right? Like it's a lot harder to, fabricate goods, right? People make art, people, make pieces of furniture and whatever it is. Experiences are something that like people have themselves and they can involve other people. Someone can create an experience for you, but like you're in attendance on some level, so there's some degree of participation, right? But at this point, if CIA.gov puts up a document that they now have stamped declassified on, even though previous said top secret, everyone's like, okay, this is the document that we should work from. Right?
Yep.
Like, and they
Hmm.
accept that somehow as more valid than the testimony of somebody who says that they saw this or experienced it or were part of it, or even more of a problem is someone who has looked at all of this and then offers their opinion is seen as less valid than the document that it was formed from. But a lot of times, people who have been looking at all of this documentation forever, looking at the cast of characters that are involved, because many of them are still alive or have lots of other works that they've done that you can analyze, sort of gone through process of elimination about what things could be or couldn't be or whatever, and then offer a thought about what really could have been going on as opposed to what the document says, like they're accused of like making jumps that they can't make. To me, it seems like at least they've put thought into it instead of just reading what the document said and then going to look and see if you, of course, you can find other things that confirm that. But at this point, like my thoughts on MK Ultra, and I say this as a person who's about to undertake a huge project that will probably take me a couple of years to really analyze what the documents that have content related to the 149 known subprojects of MK Ultra. What is the variety of possibilities that could actually have been going on there, right? Like at this point, um, having like at this point, the documents are more problematic to me than anything else, right? Like it kind of keeps people focused. Like I think the documents were released intentionally. Obviously, we know once somebody says declassified, they're releasing them intentionally. But I think the church committee hearings and the discovery of MK Ultra was intentionally seeded into the public at this point to create a knowledge of what that was, so people can push that to the side and not really think about it any longer. And to the extent that they do, they're completely, they're convinced that like what we have here is documents that make our government look like they're doing something evil and bad and all of this kind of stuff. And so that frames the entire way people look at it. And they're not asking the questions that like if you really looked into it and thought about what the things that were being talked about there do, there's like a whole other set of things that could be happening with those drugs, those technologies, those kinds of arts like magic and hypnosis and whatever, than just what they're sort of saying it was about in these documents. And all of the stuff that we don't see, like the rest of the football field while everybody's gathered over here, that's the sort of been the source of all of the technologies and corporations that are now creating and controlling the algorithm that is fabricating our reality for us now. So we've
Hmm.
gotten like they've narrowed down our focus into like a single beam of light on like one idea of what MK Ultra was, to the exclusion of almost everything else that either it could have been instead or was as well. Does that make sense?
Yep. Hmm.
And that's how
Well,
they do it. They narrow the beam, right?
oh, absolutely. Yeah, interesting ideas. MK Ultra, it's almost like, well, we have to remember why MK Ultra was found in the first place. It was found because the CIA was being investigated for spying on us.
Right.
So that's why it was found. So, for all we know, back then it was so bad, the scale at which the CIA was spying on us or whatever they were doing, it was so bad that preemptively they had to leak something because we got to protect the CIA. And honestly, yeah, I mean, we can. I'm interested to see your results of your research because it is. I don't have the answers. It's
Yeah.
crazy. The whole MK Ultra story is just absolutely insane from the get-go. And then once you start talking about how LSD was released via the Grateful Dead and all that kind of stuff. And then you not directly just the Grateful Dead, but you know what I'm saying, the hippie culture, all that kind of stuff. And then LSD, which was basically manufactured by the CIA, released into the world and all that kind of stuff. You have all that and you realize that at a minimum the project wasn't just about remote viewing or super soldiers or assassins who do whatever they're told and can't be interrogated. The the it was part of that. It was definitely part of
Sure.
that. But it was also to manipulate the entire collective mind of society, in my opinion. Obviously, everything I say is my opinion. I don't have, we don't have the
Yeah.
answers.
Yeah.
But I got a comment the other day on one of my videos, and it was basically, I stopped watching your YouTube channel because you have too many questions and not enough answers, or whatever. And it's just kind of like I now feel like I have to tell everybody, just so you know, I'm not an encyclopedia of the conspiracy realm.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think this, if we're being honest with ourselves, like I've been doing this YouTube podcasts, things like this for almost 10 years now. And my research into all of this has been 20 plus years now. I
Hmm.
have more questions now than I knew more when I started. I thought I did anyway, than I do
Yeah.
now. I have far more questions than answers. And my series, while it's going to have like a hard research component, is going to be a lot more me like throwing ideas and possibilities out there to kind of like see which things open up the widest sort of aperture for observing like what could be going on here.
Yeah.
But also like as a person who has enough experience and data from my own life that matches up to some of the projects, and to some of the testimony of people who also claim to have been in projects or whatever. And as a person who's done a lot of drugs, a lot, right? Like to the level that I feel lucky that I am here in one piece and able to string together, coherent thoughts once in a while. I know that drugs have a variety of like people have completely like a huge spectrum of experiences on drugs.
Hmm.
They don't affect everybody the same way,
Right.
right? And so there's no way that like by giving people LSD that all or even most of them are going to become hypnotizable, programmable Manchurian candidates. Um,
Hmm.
what a lot of people who take drugs, lots of different drugs, but including LSD, come back with are ideas that are actually on the cutting edge of nuclear science, genetic engineering, art, music, all kinds of things like that. They have to have collected that data as well. What did they do with that? Where are those papers? Those are the papers I'm more interested in, right? Like of all the people I know who've ever taken, like I've friends of mine who've taken LSD, only twice have I like seen somebody where I'm like, that dude is doing something weird and we better keep our eye on him, right? Usually it's some other thing that ranges from nonsense, but that's still
Hmm.
fun, to some insight that, if pursued with some degree of discipline in their regular life when they're sober, often leads someone to really interesting ideas or possibilities for things to do with their life, right? And so the idea that like they were drugging all of these people and all of them were like having, the outcome is what we think of as like mind controlled assassins or, programmable sex kittens or whatever it is ludicrous. But that didn't stop me, a reasonably intelligent person, from believing that for a long time, until eventually that story, for me at least anyway, became so boring. It was like, I'm bored of this. I'm going to go looking for something else, even if I'm just fantasizing that it's something else. And then I really started thinking about it in other ways, and all sorts of stuff opened up,
Hmm.
right? And so, like, I think that whenever we are presented with, we have this information that we want, we know we're being lied to, we want this information, the JFK files, the Epstein client list, the this, that, or the other thing. Like, if that thing actually comes, we should become more suspicious, not less, right? Like it only comes if they're trying to sort of shut the window on the idea, right?
Well, I mean, look what happened when they released the JFK and the MLK Jr. papers like a couple weeks ago or whatever. Nobody cares because, first of all, we don't. When was that exactly? Nobody knows. I mean, like, it's just like the people nowadays are not interested in what actually happened to MLK Jr. or JFK anymore. I'm sorry. It's just, like that was my parents who were interested in that. And I'm obviously interested in it, but most kids these days, they're not going to care if MLK was assassinated by the CIA. Okay, yep, now we know. Now what? Nothing. Life goes on as normal. And I think that is the problem with a lot of these secrets. They're absolutely heinous and horrifying, but it's like humanity, society these days is in such a doomer point of view, such a selfish point of view as well, meaning I'm looking out for number one and nobody else really. I got to climb to the top somehow. I don't care how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to get out of this town or whatever. I'm going to, graduate med school or whatever. That they don't really care about all of the massive scale secrets that they could have knowledge on because it's not going to change the scope of their life. And so it's easier to just go through life knowing life is messed up, life is screwed up. Yep, I'm probably being manipulated into buying this milkshake somehow or something like that. But what are you going to do? And unfortunately, people like you and I, it's just not that simple. We can't just let it go.
Right. I
Like
can't.
it's,
Yeah. I'm like
yeah,
a dog with a bone, right?
right, right. But I mean, for me, what's really interesting, I guess, about the whole brainwash thing, because I agree. I mean, yeah, I've done drugs too. I mean, I consider acid to have cured my insomnia. I had horrible insomnia when I got out of the military. I dropped acid one time, and I've been sleeping like a baby ever since. So, I mean, what does that? I don't know. But the point is, it didn't turn me into some, mindless drone, a robot out here now who doesn't know what's real and what's fake. For me, the combination of drug culture, brainwashing techniques such as propaganda and, the algorithm and stuff like that, and historic modification. Those three combined is where the picture becomes very bizarre and odd for me. And that's where
So what was that again? Drug culture,
yeah, you got
drug culture, the algorithm, and historical modification.
modification.
Got it. Okay.
Those three things, when, taken independently, you could have 1,000 reasons for why one thing is the way it is and the other isn't. But when they're all combined, you do have this picture of there's something they're actually legitimately hiding from us. There is some big answer that
Hmm.
they are legitimately hiding. And if there wasn't, they wouldn't need to fabricate reality.
Hmm.
And I'm going to go off on a little bit of conjecture here,
Do
but
it.
one of the interests, and this is just an example. There's thousands of these examples, but this is one I found recently and one that I've been looking into. You know, the terracotta army in China.
Oh,
You know what I'm talking about?
yep.
Instant wonder, discovered in 1974. And it's thousands of ancient statues that are just aligned into these neat rows. But I had a lot of questions when I was looking at them, and I come to find out a lot of people had questions about them because the soil composition doesn't match. It doesn't match the earth that it's in. There's modern chemicals that are showing up in the glazes, and there's this kind of uniformity of their features that to me and to other people suspiciously look like something that was made in the 20th century. And now, of course, the story says that they date back to like the third century BC. And like, I don't know, they were built to guard the tomb of this emperor. But I think that's all a myth. I think it's designed to amplify cultural prestige. The realization hit me that these statues are probably fabrications and they're probably postmodern like performance art that's kind of masquerading, if you will, as ancient history.
Hmm.
And in my opinion, the Chinese government did that to make their stock market look more profitable to invest in to the West. And that's a whole nother tangent. But you have a whole nother one too. And that's literally, and this is going to shake so many people, but the nuclear bomb.
Yeah. No,
Since
no,
Hiroshima,
we all question that here. You're in good company.
I mean, since Hiroshima and like Nagasaki, we've just kind of been indoctrinated with this idea that at any second, depending on how we vote, depending on what countries we visit, whatever, we could all just be destroyed.
Right.
Because it's mutual destruction is guaranteed. Like they all say, one nuke goes off, the entire planet burns. Really? It's just that simple? That exists? It's just a get out of jail forever card? Like just boom, just like that, we're all gone? And why would we do that? Who would be left to survive? So it's a very interesting finite end to a brainwashing, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And we might be walking through this hall of mirrors that's been reflecting, if you will, propaganda from thousands of years ago still. If you do look at any of the spiritual narratives, if you do look at any of the myths, where are all of these flying gods? Where are all of these creatures that we've never seen on the planet before? Where are the giants and the three-headed dragons and the things in the ocean? We're, I mean, I'm not like a Bigfoot hunter or anything, but you gotta admit, there's a lot of cultural, mythological, and ranging from oral and written accounts of these types of things that existed out there.
Hmm.
And I'm a spiritualist. I believe in many gods existing, but I believe that in the end, what they're hiding is actually legitimately, and this is crazy, but I actually think it's the truth. And the truth is that we're not we matter. That's the truth. We matter. Like we're important.
Yeah.
And they would have us believe anything but that. And they can threaten us with this idea that our lives, our countries, everything we've ever worked for can be just disappeared in 15 minutes and 23 seconds or however long it takes all of Russia's 4,000 nukes to land on our heads. And that's just it. But I just don't believe in any of that. Well, actually, I do believe in the nuclear bomb for the record, but I don't believe that they would just destroy the planet to win the war. That doesn't make any sense. But when you combine the brainwashing, potential historical modification, for instance, the pyramids, what the hell is going on with the pyramids these days? Everything is getting modified about Egypt all the time. It's because Egypt is a universal symbol of hallucinations and magic. Egypt is more than just a country. Egypt hasn't been inhabited by Egyptians for many, many years. They've been small tribes that took over whatever was there. And so the whole Egypt question, why do we have all of these this Egyptian architecture in Washington, D.C.? Why is the all-seeing eye on the dollar? all that kind of stuff, it leads me to yes, the CIA is definitely brainwashing us. No, not with LSD per se, but there is a global truth that every country knows about. The world leaders of almost every country know about. Maybe not like the smaller ones, like, I don't know, Sudan or like the Congo or like little countries like that. The governments probably aren't privy to this global agenda, but like there's got to be some kind of answer for why humanity can't excel. Because I believe that each one of us is like on an independent level suppressed. I believe each one of us could achieve something absolutely phenomenal, but we're subject to all these chemicals and all of these frequencies and all of these outside influences that get into you, and they eliminate not only your body but also your mind. And this isn't from some new age, I put crystals up my ass and then I go and walk around town and I can see all the energies. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like literally your cell signal is killing you right now. It's melting your brain. Like that kind of stuff, but that's just one. At any moment, if you're in a civilized population or civilized area with any amount of population in general, you're subject to all of these frequencies. Everybody's afraid of 5G. But it existed long before 5G. What are the Buddhists doing when they're up in their temples and they're hitting their bells to have the healing frequencies and all that kind of stuff? Like, there's something there that the CIA knows about, and many of these secret organizations in the world know about, and it just can't get into layman brains, essentially.
So, okay, there's a couple of things that you said there that I want to sort of remark on, and then I want to return to something we were talking about prior to that. So, you said drug culture, algorithmic science and technology, like algorithmic science, and then the modification of history. And what those three things all have to do with is perception.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like perception management. There's a book by one of the Huxleys called Doors of Perception, right? And I think that that is, you know, the desire to shape people's perception of things, to manage perception. Perception management is an industry for a reason. It's kind of like a two-way street. I actually think that like whatever or whoever is doing this is actually obsessed with our perception, right? Like I think that the thing that's unique, like you kind of like you said, we're special, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one thing that cannot be sort of replicated in any way that is legitimate, and that is an individual's perception, right? And so, like, whatever I'm looking at, like, my eyes are different than yours, my consciousness is different than yours, my memory is different than yours, my fears, my everything about the angle from which I view reality is different than yours. And no matter how much they feed into it, how much they fill us with propaganda and fear and try and get us to have a more homogenized perception of things, like they can never quite get the angle to match up for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, but if they can keep us focused mostly on the same thing, even though we're viewing it kind of differently, it gives them the chance to observe sort of what our actual natural perception is based on how our first reaction to that what our first reactions to those stimuli are before we start all kind of agreeing on what they mean and what we should do or whatever it is. And that I think is the key to this answer that you're curious about, right? I'm curious about the answer too, but there's some things I've noticed for, over the years that I've been looking at this, right? It's almost like there's some sort of like kaleidoscopic prism, right? That sort of is a version of reality generator. And each person is like a different facet on that crystal. So sees things from a slightly different angle. And each angle has a different set of potentials and perceptions of it, right? And I think there's some, whether it is a group of beings or a single being that has fractalized itself is a control freak, is obsessed with like not ever have like there can't be people that know something it doesn't know or can go somewhere it doesn't go or can do something it doesn't do, right? And so is trying to get like a little piece of each facet of the crystal so that they can have like a lens. It's almost like there's an Emily lens and there's a John lens, right? And that by sort of looking at it through all the different lenses, you're able to put together what you think of is a complete picture of reality that like no one else can tell you anything about that you don't already know, right? The problem with that is that, like if you read my emails, right? Some of them you'd think you would know what they were about, but others you wouldn't because like maybe there's a personal joke between people, like we have like a funny way we refer to something. And so if you acted based on like what the thing actually said, like you might like do the wrong thing, like not you might not like get the answer right. And over time, it's like playing telephone. Those increase and increase and increase. So the more control this thing is trying to gain, almost like the more deteriorated the message they're actually trying to receive becomes,
Hmm.
right? And I've looked deeply into, well, I've studied the eyes quite a bit because I think our eyes have a lot to do with this. A lot of what we think of as mind control or neuroscience and whatnot has a lot more to do with our eyes and the pigmentation and the fat deposits in our eyes than per se what we think of as like other parts of the brain function, right? I think that has something to do with it. I think they are deeply obsessed and concerned with our genetics, right? I think most people have been fed a bill of goods about what eugenics is, and it doesn't mean that that awful idea of genetics that we all think isn't true. It's like part of it the same way the thing we were saying about MK Ultra, like the version they want us to believe is part of it, but there's like this whole other type of thing, right? Like I think that whatever the controller management system, whatever it is, I don't even know if I think about it that way anymore, is deeply obsessed with genetic potential, and see the people of Earth as resources. And but it's kind of like once you've found a resource, you don't want anyone to know that you found this resource, particularly if you have found the resource on land that belongs to someone else and not you. As long as the person who owns the land, i.e., the person who owns the body or the genetics you're obsessed with, isn't aware that there's a gold mine inside of them, you can keep stealing from that and doing things with it that if they found out, they might put a stop to, right? And then you brought up the bomb, right? Which is interesting. Like, I think that the bomb exists as kind to the extent that it does as a way to scare people away from understanding nuclear physics, right? Like, oh, like that's dangerous, scary, hard to understand stuff. But if you start really looking into nuclear physics, first you find out like that there's this really interesting connection between nuclear physics and DNA, right? Which make like at first I was like, that was wild for me to understand. Of course, they were sort of discovered around the same time in some ways, but like literally the most amount of DNA is in the nucleus of the cell. So it's telling us right there that there's a connection between these two things. With our DNA and our genetics, we have what they call nuclear families, right?
Hmm.
And then they also scare us with this thing called a nuclear bomb that keeps us from understanding physics,
Yeah.
right? And so radiation is a really interesting topic. But I got to a place where literally everything I was studying, like things that seemed like they have nothing in common, were leading me back to this connection between nuclear science and genetics, right? And so the people don't understand what their genetics are useful for. And literally now, literally, you can find research being done on using custom strands of DNA to help create like fusion reactors that can like that are like make sense economically because they don't require as much energy to cool because what DNA is really good at doing is coding for these like carbon nanotube lattice things that are um, superconductor, like they're superconductors, right? They have low electrical resistance, so it's basically it can get hot and stay cool at the same time. So our genetics like is great for coding for materials that make fusion, nuclear fusion, like really like possible on a scale that would be amazing, right? So like the magic world that they want to build is largely dependent on our genetics, right? So then they're trying to do things where they like they create like they do it with an algorithm or they create like copies of these custom strands of DNA. But how did they find this out? They found this out by collecting people's DNA and see what they could do with it. Not everyone's DNA is the same, right? So I think it is literally like us ourselves that whatever that is out there is kind of obsessed with. And to the extent you want to be able to continue to exploit people, you have to make them have low self-esteem, right? You have to make them believe that they're just one of 8 billion people on Earth, that they're too stupid to understand genetic engineering and nuclear science, that eugenics is meant to kill them. I'm not, by the way, I'm not saying like eugenics is good, but they understand it as something really different than the way that we learn about it is, right? And like basically, the whole surveillance reality, the whole collection of data is all about like exploiting our creativity, our ideas. Like big data is really the biggest data in the world is our genetic information. Like every experience that anyone in your genetic line has ever been through is stored in your DNA, right? I don't know if you've seen the studies that say that they can hold the whole library of Alexandria on a single gram or molecule or whatever of DNA. So it's like, oh, literally, the Library of Alexandria didn't burn. It's in our DNA. It's inside of us. I mean, maybe it burned externally, like it's an idea, right? So that's how I see this, right? And now it's just a question of like not becoming so demoralized by the stories and the versions of reality that have been offered to us, right? Not becoming so obsessed with the who, right? And not being so sure we know the why and paying a lot more attention to like what is actually happening and how is this being achieved. We can figure out how it works and then we can start to take things apart, put them together and literally piece our way back towards a reality that makes sense because you are absolutely right, my friend. Nothing about this one does. Your thoughts?
So who is it, human or not? What is obsessed with us in your point of view?
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jonathan Val from 21CD. If you'd like to hear the rest of the more than 2 hour show, you can do that by following one of the links to the communities down below. There are promo codes and offers down there, as well as the 21CD website link and a link to his YouTube channel. All right, guys, have a good one. Bye bye.